Hi everybody, it's Rob Flux here from Property Developer Network, coming to you once again for a Sunday session. Our topic this week is building a rapport with agents. Before we actually start on our topic for the week, I want to personally say my humble apologies for missing our Sunday session last week. Many of you would know that I spent an entire week doing skydiving, learning how to jump out of a plane. I jumped out of a plane 12 times in 5 days, trying to get my A-grade skydiving license. And at the end of that week, I was physically exhausted, and my intention was to have a 15-minute kip on the couch last Sunday. And I laid my head down on the couch about 2 o'clock and woke up about 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So my humble apologies for anyone who was looking for this particular topic last week, I guess being the Sunday session that we missed. So my apologies there. Can see a couple of people coming on while we're waiting for a few others to come. I might just do a little bit of the logistics in and around the place. Had a fantastic session yesterday in Sydney for our monthly meetup there. We held those meetings on the 4th Saturday of every month in Sydney. We had Mitchell Drake, who's a town planner, talking about all things in and around town planning, in and around the New South Wales planning side of things. So that was a fantastic element of that. So thank you, Mitchell, for that opportunity and presenting there. Also want to welcome all of our Property Development Formula students who spent 3 days with me, not last weekend, but the weekend before, I guess, going through, the start of their 12-month journey with us. We spent 3 days sitting in a classroom with laptops, actually analyzing sites, teaching them how to do site analysis in a 10-minute toll gate, so that they can actually look at more properties in less time, and showing them the process in how to do that. So welcome to all of those guys. As I said, there's about 30 of them in the room on that particular day. I'm looking forward to watching all of them over the next 12 months mature into the developers that I know that they're actually going to be. Some other logistics coming up. Our next meetup in Melbourne is actually on November the 9th. So it's the first Saturday of the month in Melbourne. We've got a gentleman by the name of Adam Panisi. Now, Adam and I started our property development journey at very similar timelines. I guess whilst I've done a lot of property, having bought my first house at 18, Adam and I started developing at very much the same time, and followed a very similar course in the very early days. But Adam has gone on to do massive things in the property development world, with about $20 million worth of property development in the pipeline. And he's going to be talking in Melbourne about how to raise funds through co-development. So how to get investors to actually invest in you and in your projects. And he's going to show you how you can scale to those multi-million-dollar projects, even when you're starting with very little money of your own. So anyone out there who says that you can't do deals without money, I highly encourage you to come to that particular session in Melbourne. Our next event in Brisbane is also going to be on November the 9th, and we're going to have the Brisbane City Council coming and presenting to us. That's a major coup. I've actually been working on that particular presentation for the last 3 years, and I guess it's quite a bit of a coup to actually have them. So we've got, I guess, the head of the planning, policy making, so Councillor Matthew Burke. He's going to be talking to us about all of the upcoming changes to legislation that are coming in as part of the Brisbane Future Blueprint initiative that they've been working on for the last 12 to 18 months. So that's fantastic. And our next meetup in Sydney is going to be on November the 23rd. That is Core Logic. Core Logic are the people who make the product RP Data, for any of you who are more familiar with that product name as opposed to, their branding. They're going to be coming in and showing us some tips and tricks on how to actually use RP data to get the most out of it. So how to do your property research, how to, find some of those development sites and understand the best way to research what your product should be purchased for, and also what it's going to be sold for. Now, in doing that, I am working very, very hard with them in the background. We already have a fantastic super special with those guys that we can get RP data for $99, which has got an RRP of $350. And that is every single bell and whistle turned on. There is not a single feature in that package that is not turned on. and we get nationwide access for $99 a month. Now, I'm trying to work on them for a one-off super special for that event. No promises, but I'm doing what I can. See if we can get some extra bonuses thrown in for anyone who turns up to that. And I will also see if we can actually extend that out to the wider community. Yeah, so that's what's coming up, folks. So thank you all. I can see a number of people coming on board. So I guess throw a hello out to Jeff, Vanessa, Luke, Jane, and a couple of others. Unfortunately, it's not showing me everybody who's on from a name perspective, but hello all, and welcome back. So this week we are talking about, our topic will be building a rapport with agents. Now, I guess it's a very important part of the process, getting to work with agents, getting them to actually want to deal with you. One of the challenges that you will find in the process, you need to fill your pipeline up with deals, but how do you get those deals? And everyone says that the best thing you can do is actually get them off market. Well, the reality is that off market has actually a couple of different layers to that. So what you'll typically find is what you can do as an individual is limited by how much time you've actually got available. But if you can find ways to leverage your time and get others to do work for you, i.e. agents, they are able to, I guess, source and scope properties on your behalf through a range of different tactics, which I'm going to talk to today. Some of those being listings that they've actually got up. But if you build a fantastic rapport with them, they will actually start to communicate with you, or if you've got a very good rapport, they'll actually start communicating with you before they actually sign the listing. So they'll just say, hey, I've got a property around the corner that I'm interested in getting the listing on. I think I've got a good chance. Would that be of interest to you? And that's when you know you've got a fantastic rapport with an agent, when you've got that sort of relationship with them. So I'm going to talk to you about some tips and tricks on how you can actually build that relationship. It takes some time to actually build that. And get to the point where you can actually add value to their process. And if you can add value to their process, that's going to make their job easier. If you can make their job easier, they're going to make your job easier by hunting out and finding deals. So I can see a couple of comments on there. And Luke is saying money shouldn't be the issue. That is correct, Luke. Money shouldn't be the issue. Money is one of the many issues that you have along the way. It's not the issue. But its mindset is your ability to be resourceful to overcome that. And that's the topic that Adam is actually going to be talking about, is not only mindset, but also process in how you can actually get those co-developers on. So great to see. Now, I am somewhat parched. For the last, I'm going to say 3 weeks, I seem to be doing nothing but speaking engagements and doing lots and lots of yelling. So my voice is struggling of late, so my humble apologies. I'll be sipping quite slowly through the whole process. And you guys know me. I'll be sipping some of this, and I'll be sipping some of this, not necessarily in that order. That said, here we go. So before we get into how do you build a relationship with an agent, let's talk about what kind of agents you actually might want to be dealing with. So there's agents that you want to be buying through. There's agents that you want to be selling through. There's agents that are generalists, and they're good to both buy and sell through. There are newbie agents, and there are agents with years and years of experience, and each and every one of them are going to have different issues and challenges and opportunities for you to actually work with. So if you've got an agent to buy through, they're generally someone who is really just looking for the sale at any opportunity, and they will help you to condition down your vendor. And if you can arm them with the right sort of ammunition to help them condition down the vendor, they're going to be working on your behalf, not because they're legally obliged to actually work on the vendor's behalf, but typically those agents are more motivated by the commission check itself, and they will sell pretty much at any cost they can, because they know that it's easier to turn it over and miss out on a tiny bit of commission than it is to work really, really hard for those extra couple of $1,000, and maybe they get $100 more in the pocket. So quite often those agents are, I'm going to say they're more out there than you would think. There's a lot of them, and once you actually get to recognize the personality traits of those guys, they want to be your best friends in the buying process. The challenge is that they are not your best friends in the selling process. So remember that whatever your development strategy is, you will be buying something and you'll be developing that into multiple something else's. And so you'll be needing to sell the finished product. So it's very important for you to actually understand which people you're going to be buying through and which people you're actually going to be selling through. Now, the people that are going to sell for the highest price, they're the agents that you really want on your side at the end of the process. So if you can try and identify them early in the piece, use them to their best advantage, that's going to be, I guess, fantastic for you. Now, there's also agents that are newbies and also agents with years of experience. Now, in my humble experience in dealing with agents, what I have found is that the newbies are actually very hungry to learn. They don't yet have their commission check pipeline filled up. They are looking for any edge that they can, any competitive edge that they can, to try and get them to be better in the marketplace. And so they are willing to work with people and build rapport with people that where they think that there's going to be potential for multiple sales, and where they think that's going to help them in both the short term and also in the long term. In contrast to that, there are agents that have got years and years of experience that I guess they know that they can actually sell the property irrespective, and in many instances they've sold development sites successfully, I guess, well before you came along, and they don't believe that you can add much value to the process. And so it's very hard for you to build a rapport with someone by adding value through your knowledge in property development where they've actually already got that knowledge themselves. And so what I'm going to try and give you is a few different techniques that you can do that, irrespective of where somebody is in the process from an agent's point of view, as to, I guess, the kinds of way that you can actually start to build that rapport. So the first thing I would say, before you actually try to reach out to any agent at any time, you want to make sure that you have done your research on the agent. There are lots of different ways that you can actually do research on an agent. I guess we're in the age of the internet, and so there are a number of tools out there that will allow you to do, I guess, a massive amount of homework on your agent before you physically pick up the phone. So the first thing you want to do is, there's a number of portals out there. So there's realestate.com has actually a page that allows you to find an agent. And if you do that, you'll see all of the agents in your particular suburb, and it'll actually give you statistics on how those agents have done. So how many sales they've had recently, what their median sale price was, were they in area, out of area, those sorts of things. So that's going to help you massively in that regard. There's also other portals out there which are what they call aggregated portals. So now I'm not going to suggest which one of these is better than the other, just knowing that they are out there for you guys to do better, because what you'll find is in one particular area, one of these aggregating portals will be better than the other, and then you go to another area and it might be completely different just because they have different relationships there. So there's one called openagent.com.au and there's another one called agentfinder.com.au. Now, basically, these are tools where the agents go and list themselves on the portal itself. And then as people buy and sell through that agent, the agent will actually ask them to provide, I guess, not just referrals, but testimonials and things like that, and give you like a star rating as to how the agent is actually performing. And so it's a really good way to actually see what kind of comments and feedback and that sort of thing that you're actually getting on your agent. So it's really good to see those elements on your agent up front. So the kinds of things that you'd be looking for when you're trying to do the research would be, what are the statistics of that particular agent? So how many properties have they sold in the area? How long have they actually been in the industry, or how long they've actually been in the area? So they may be in the industry for 10 years, but only in the area for 2, for example. Are they an in-area or out-of-area agent? So that's really important, because if they're an out-of-area agent, they may not know that market very well. And if they don't know that market very well, there may be opportunities there for you to actually pick up that for a bargain, because it's a lot of hassle for them to drive back and forth for the open homes and things like that. So where they're out of area, I guess there's always opportunities for picking up discounts. When they're in area, then chances are they're one of your experts that you're going to be relying on through your whole development cycle, and they will be knowing what things have sold off the plan, what they listed for, and what they actually sold for, which may not necessarily hit your sales portals like RP Data and Price Finder for several months. So they'll actually be very current with what's happening in the market today, because the contract was signed yesterday, but the title hasn't settled, so you're not going to actually get any homework on that. So knowing if they're in area or out of area is going to be very, very advantageous. You can also obviously use Google to do the research on your agent. Google, Facebook, and LinkedIn, I'm going to say, are probably the three biggest ways that you can do homework on your agent before you physically give them a call. And the last one would be the agent themselves will typically have their own website. So whether that be their own name, so I have robflux.com. Sometimes the agents actually have their own personal name, or else they will actually be working through an agency, and their agency may have a profile page on that particular agent. So always make sure you've done your homework before you actually pick up the phone, and that way, when you're actually having a conversation with someone, you've already got some points in common that you can actually start to converse about, which will help you in feeding, feeding how the conversation flows. What you'll find in any instance that you're trying to deal with anybody new, the hardest part is the first 2 or 3 minutes of conversation, actually trying to find some things in common to actually have a conversation about. So if you've done that homework up front, it's going to be much easier for you to have those conversations. And for example, what you might say is, hey, I can see that you particularly sold that property around the corner for this sort of price. Tell me about how hard that sale was. Did it take a long time? Why did they achieve that particular price over and above anything else? So that's giving you some really good insights, especially if that property is very similar to the kinds of properties that you're actually looking for. So that's always a great conversation starter in that regard. The next thing is, in order to actually have anybody in life actually remember who you are, it's important that you have a minimum of 3 to 5 engagements with someone before they even know. I guess from a personality point of view, they may recall your name, but they won't remember the conversation. But when you start to have multiple engagements with someone, they're actually starting to build a relationship with you. And so what you need to do in the early stages while you're trying to build rapport is that you need to, manipulate how you come up with those first 3 to 5 engagements. And I don't mean manipulate in a negative sense. What I mean by that is to say, there are ways that you can craft a flow in your conversation to ensure that each time you have a conversation, it's leading to another conversation. So that's very, very important in the process. Now, I can see Jason saying he's not going to make it. He's at the Gold Coast 600. So, mate, I'm a bit of a rev head myself, so I certainly appreciate that. I was watching the telecast right up to the last second on the live. So no problems, Jason. You can watch the replay, mate. Go and enjoy yourself. So how do we manipulate these, or how do we manifest rather than manipulate these 3 to 5 engagements? Well, for me, I have a little bit of a workflow that I go through. So firstly, I will actually give them a call up front. So telephone call, I will not email them. I will not use the portals that allow you to email them. I won't do anything like that. I'll actually have a personal conversation with someone. I'll call them, I'll introduce myself, I'll tell them what I'm looking for, I'll tell them what my requirements are, and then what I'll do is I'll manipulate a way to say, hey, I've given you a lot of information here. Can I please take your email address and I will email you all of this in writing. So instantly you see that the first conversation has led to a second engagement. And of course, the very next thing that you need to do is actually email them with all the requirements. And you want to make sure that you're very clear with what your requirements are. So if you're looking for a particular type of strategy, then what kind of zoning is it? What kind of land size is it? What is the budget that you're looking for? What are the terms that you're looking for? All of those sorts of things, anything that you can actually give them that's going to help them in sourcing a site for you is going to be fantastic. I can see a question here from Michael Cawthorne. So what are your thoughts on incentives for agents? In particular, what are your thoughts on paying commission early? So Michael, I will actually answer that, but I'm going to answer that a little bit later in the conversation, if that's okay. I've got a little bit of a segue that will hopefully transition across to that. Hopefully that helps. So after I email them, I guess what I say in the email is, hey, I will follow you up in a week just to see how you're tracking with that. And of course, what I'm going to then do is put a calendar reminder into my calendar. And of course, I'm then going to physically give them a call a week later. And I make sure that it's not too long, it's not too short. I give them enough time to actually process the information that I've sent them. I follow them up and I ask them, hey, did you get my email? I want to make sure that firstly that the email address I got was correct and that they had a chance to read it. And then I ask them, do you have any questions in and around that? And specifically, do you have any opportunities that might fit that criteria? So you see very quickly that workflow has straight away given us 3 of those 5 engagements that we're looking for. So right now we're in a process where, you know, they at least know who we are, they at least know what we're looking for. And if we called them again a second time, chances are we're actually going to be in their phone book this time and they'll be able to say, hey, Rob, how you going? And so that's really what you're trying to build, and you're trying to get that to grow over time so that they're not just understanding who you are when you call them, but they're actually now starting to look for opportunities to call you, which is quite important. Now, the next thing I would do, depending upon how early in the process I am with the particular agent, is I'll have a look at the listings that they've actually got. I'll have a look at which one of them may fit my criteria or go very, very close to fitting my criteria, where they're having an open inspection. Now, I'm not one to subscribe to an open inspection, I guess, to look at the house, especially because my strategy tends to involve removing the house in most instances. But what I'm looking for is an opportunity where I can actually meet them face to face. And so I will try to find a way to get to an open inspection on a property that is very similar to the requirements that I'm actually looking for. And then I'll say, hey, John, how are you? You remember we had a chat the other day. This is me, Rob. And I'll make sure that I actually give them my business card at the time. And then, of course, I will arrange for a coffee catch-up. At that point, when I arrange the coffee catch-up, the timing of that coffee catch-up is quite important. Now, if you understand the business workflow of how an agent works, their busiest day is typically a Saturday. Their second busiest day is a Monday, because Monday is when they typically follow up all the leads that they got from their open inspections on the Saturday. Their third busiest day will be a Friday, because that's the day that they, I guess, are getting ready for the open inspections and making sure their advertising is live and that sort of thing. Next to that, usually Tuesday morning, they will actually have a sales meeting that, you know, the entire team in the office gets together and talks about you know, how everybody's going, how many leads they've got, you know, what listings they've got that other people might actually be interested in. So you've really only got about 2.5 days in the week where they're actually going to have any time available to you. So make sure that if you're going to arrange one of these catch-ups, that you try and make that in a time that fits their workflow. Don't try to force them in and around yours. You're trying to build a rapport with them. They're not trying to build a rapport with you. I guess the thing that I would make sure is that you let them know, hey, I'm a repeat buyer here. So not only am I a repeat buyer, but I'm a repeat seller. And if we can build a really good long-term relationship, then what I'm looking for is transactions that are going to be very easy for you by bringing them my way. And conversely, potential for double commissions where there's opportunities to, I guess, sell going back the other way. So when you actually get the chance to physically meet them, now this is where, I guess, your human relationships actually start to kick in. So at this point, you want to get to know the person, okay? Whilst they are, I guess, important in your sales process and in your deal finding process, they are actually human beings. And if you can find a way to actually engage with them, get to know them on a more personal level, then you're more likely to build a friendship type relationship with them. And if they have that friendship trust relationship, they'll build trust with you. If they build trust with you, then they're more likely to give you those off-market listings before they actually go live. Okay. So what are the things that you would do? Well, you're try to find things that you have in common with them. So ask them about their friends, ask them about their family, their hobbies, their pets. How long have they been in the industry? You know, how long have they been working in the area? Those sorts of things. And what you want to do is, I guess, find ways to actually build that rapport in a way that allows them to talk about them rather than you talking about you, okay? Really, really important if you're going to get to know someone that you are asking them questions and you actually take the time to listen. That's really important. If you're too busy telling them all about you and all of the things that you want or need, that's not really showing much respect for them as a human. And so I'll be very conscious of making sure that you spend the time to get to know them as people. Make sure that during that conversation, no matter how it goes, that you find something that you are able to be grateful for and thank them for their contribution. So, you know, whatever it is, whether they give you a partial lead or if they say, hey, I think there's somebody else in the office that might have something of interest to you, make sure you take the time to actually thank them, okay? Make them feel important and that you respect the fact that they are going out of their way to actually assist you. You want to find ways also to help them with their problems, and they're going to have multiple problems in the process, whether they realize it or not. And so one of the things that you can do is actually say, I'm an expert in this particular industry, in this property development space. You're an expert in the sales space, but you may not necessarily know whether or not this is a developable site, for example. So one of the things that I tend to lead with is, look, what we've found is that in analysing our projects, that about 90% of them that are developable are not profitable. And as a result, we find that many of the agents are doing a listing which tries to cover both an emotional sale and also a development sale. And so the ad itself is not really targeted at either market, and it's a more generalist type ad. What if I was able to offer you a service where for free, I'd be more than happy to analyze that site, and I will tell you not only is it developable, but also if it's likely to be profitable. And if it's likely to be profitable, then chances are I can actually give you an offer within 24 hours of you bringing that to me. If I think it's not likely to be profitable, wouldn't it be great if you could then just advertise that, I guess, on a pure emotional sales type campaign, make sure that you get the best outcome for the vendor. You're going to set their expectations correctly. And by setting their expectations correctly, you're going to then have a much easier sales process, knowing that they're not trying to get a development uplift on a site that just isn't going to make sense. So what you're doing is you're giving them the ability to learn from the process and actually go in and provide value back to their vendor. Every time you can add value to your agent, and they can take that back to their vendor, that agent is going to, I guess, build a better relationship with the vendor, which is going to make it much, much easier for them to build that relationship with you. So you're looking for opportunities to actually help them. So when I do those site analysis, I will typically do a very brief email that actually goes through and highlights some of the reasons why I think it's good, bad, or indifferent. So for example, if there's a constraint on there which might indicate that there's a small amount of overland flow, or maybe there's some bushfire attack levels or something along those lines, I'll actually take the time to do a screenshot of that. I'll share that with the agent and say, here are some of the issues and challenges on this particular property, and articulate that to them so they can actually take that information back to their vendor and say, well, this is why it's not going to work in this particular instance. Make sure that when you're doing that, you're operating with honesty. Make sure that you're operating with integrity. Make sure that you're not just making up excuses why a property is, you know, you're not just making up a reason to lowball the site, okay? You need to be giving them facts, good, hard, clear, evidence-based facts that can be substantiated and that can easily verified. And by doing that, they're going to build that trust relationship with you. And that's going to very much help you with your rapport. Now I can see a couple of questions coming through, so I might just take the time to have a sip and read some of those. So Tracy is saying, can't do it, illegal to get your commissions till the... Okay, so Tracy, I'm going to come back to that one, as I said, in a sec. So let's digress until we get to that element of that, but I hear what you're saying. And Tony says, hi mate, how are you? And I can see a few other people have come on. So Scott, Tony, Sam, Richard, Michael, Jason, Carmel, Steve, Barb, Carol, and a whole bunch more. So I don't know that I can scroll that far back. So good to see. Now, In going through that rapport building process, I said to get to know them a little bit better. Well, the best way to get to know someone is to actually ask them questions, and more importantly, not just ask them questions, but be curious with the response. Now, what I mean by that is, if you ask them a question, you want it to be an open-ended question. So, what are your favorite hobbies? You know, those sorts of things. That is an open-ended question. When they start to respond to that question, no matter what that is, find a way to listen to what that is. So be curious as to the response, and look for a secondary or supplementary question that is based on that response. That takes it a little layer deeper in, I guess, the amount of sharing that they actually give with you. And that's a very good way to actually build rapport. Interestingly, that technique is also a very good way to get to know the motivation for why a vendor is actually selling. So it's called the 5 whys. And if you basically ask a question, and whatever the response is, you say, well, why is that? And then when they respond to that, you say, why is that? And you layer that down, and eventually, by the time you get 4 or 5 layers in, you generally get to the core reason as to how or why somebody is actually motivated in doing something. So you want to, I guess, listen more than you talk when you're asking those questions. Make sure that you're spending the time to hear what they've got to say, and not telling them all about you and how good you are. You want to make sure you are giving value back to them, as I said. So find ways in whatever their issue is, whatever their challenge is, that you want to add that value. You want to also be confident. And I know that many of you are very new in the property development sphere, and so you may not actually be confident yourself right now. And so it's very difficult to feel confident when you're not very knowledgeable in the process, which is why asking questions is the right way to start. So let them know, hey, I'm new to the process. Don't try to bluff your way through it and pretend that you know more than them in instances where you don't. If they've clearly got experience in a particular area, ask them to share that. Be confident in how you come across, without necessarily being confident in the knowledge that you have. Now, where you have knowledge, you obviously want to be confident with that as well. If you can find reasons to get them to laugh, that is like bonus points. So any time that you can make a joke or a reference, and make sure that the joke is in good humor. Dad jokes are not really, I love them, but they may not. Make sure that you find good ways to I guess, build that little rapport. And as I said before, try and find reasons to meet them in person, not text or email in the early days. Now, I know that in the modern age of technology, it's very tempting to use the agents' portals to send them an email. It's very tempting to send them a text message. And I guess, yes, the message gets across, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't actually build that rapport with them. And it's not about getting a message across. It's about communicating, and communicating is actually very different. So the best ways to meet in person is open homes, coffee appointments, and as I said, you want to make sure that they're midweek appointments, not on a Monday or Friday, or preferably not on a Tuesday or so. You also want to get, when you're actually face-to-face with them, there's a technique called matching and mirroring. So what that means is you want to try and match their mannerisms, you want to match their language, you want to match their tonality, all those sorts of things, so that what they see in you is very similar to what they see in themselves. Now, by that, there's a couple of different things that you want to look at. So, for example, the language that they use. They may use particular keywords repetitively. So if they say, hey, that's awesome, then somewhere in the conversation, you want to say, that's awesome. If they use a particular phraseology in how they're just articulating the name of the suburb, you may pronounce the name of the suburb differently, but you want to make sure that you pronounce it the same way that they do when you're repeating back to them. The tonality that you're talking to and the energy level. So if they're talking at a very slow, reserved pace, then you also want to talk at a very slow, reserved pace. If they're talking very fast, then you want to also try to talk very fast. You want to match their energy levels. If their body language is that they're leaning back, then when you're in a chair, you also want to lean back. If their body language is that they're leaning in and they've got their finger on their chin, then you want to try and do the same thing. Now, you're not trying to, I guess, be a complete mirror. What you're just trying to do is just get them to feel comfortable that you and they are very similar in a number of different ways. So, your hand gestures. So if they do a particular hand gesture like this, then find a way that you can do that same hand gesture. You want to also match their breathing. So if they're a very shallow breather, then you shallow breathe. If they're a very deep breather, then you deep breathe. And it's funny how when you start to do those things, you start to build a bit of a rhythm between each other. And so then what will happen is what they call a lead and a lag. So initially you're going to follow them, and it might take 10, maybe 15 minutes of you just mirroring everything that they do. And then when you think that you've got a little bit of a rhythm with them, when you think you've got a little bit of a rapport, then you just try to do the lead and you'll do the hand movement and you'll see whether or not they'll follow. Or you may lean back in the chair and you'll see if they follow. At that point, you know that you've got a rapport with them. Now, it's very common in the sales world for them to actually teach this match and mirror technique. And so it's very important that you actually start to learn that yourself. Now, it's not manipulation. I want to be very clear. You're not trying to manipulate someone. What you're trying to do is just find empathy and rapport. So it's very, very different in that process. The other thing that we want to do, and I guess coming back to, I guess, the question that I guess was asked a little earlier, and I'm just trying to see Michael Cawthorne. So Michael's Cawthorne is, what are your thoughts on incentives for agents and paying commission early? So I guess I want to be very careful here. We need to understand what their drivers are, and their drivers are clearly that they need to get paid. And so what we need to do is find ways to ensure that they are getting paid, but we can't use that as a manipulation technique or a bribery technique. So there's elements of that, as Tracy indicated, that can be illegal if you don't do it correctly. So it's not about paying them extra. What it is about doing is making sure that if you're trying to negotiate specific kinds of terms, so for example, if I want a 12-month delayed settlement, what that means is that their commission is going to be delayed by 12 months. Now, they've worked really hard for that sale. So what you want to try and do is not I guess, bribe them by doing extra, but you want to make sure that the deposit that you have I guess, paid up front is large enough to actually pay their commission. And you may say, well, if we can ensure that deposit is released early, that would allow the vendor to pay your commission early. Would that actually help you? And as soon as they recognize that their need is actually going to be met, then they're more likely to try and help you with your needs. And it's really important that you understand that when you go into a negotiation between yourself and a vendor, it's not just a negotiation between the two of you. It's actually a negotiation between three people. So there's you, there's the vendor, and then there's the agent that sits in the middle. And if the agent does not have their needs met, then most of the time it's going to make it very difficult for them to actually represent the two parties on a fair and even level to make sure that they find a good balanced negotiation, if that makes sense. So some of the things that you need to do in understanding that is work out, well, whilst I can't pay extra because that is bribery and you can't do that, it's illegal, and they have to legally represent the vendor. So that's, I guess, their legal and moral obligation. What you can do, though, is find other ways to incentivize them. So, for example, you're going to be buying one something and you're going to be creating multiple other somethings. Now, they know that you're going to be creating multiple other somethings. So the conversation could say, well, if this, if we build a good relationship together, then I'm going to be selling at some point in the future. I'd be more than happy to have that conversation to see how and where that goes. Now, you can't specifically bribe them to say, well, I'll only give you this listing if I get this sale. That's not legal. But what you can do is to say, well, if I get the sale, irrespective of how that comes about, I will be looking to sell, and I'm certainly interested in having a conversation with you about selling. So that's quite important in how that's done. Make sure that you understand, I guess, also their levels of experience in the process. So as I said before, if they are a new agent, then almost guaranteed they're living paycheck to paycheck. So every single sale that happens means that they are using that commission to just put bread on the table and fuel in the car and that sort of thing. So if you're trying to negotiate a 12-month delayed settlement, then almost guaranteed that agent will not want a delayed settlement, because that means that they're going to be impacted on their commission check waiting 12 months, and they're going to struggle with that. So because of that, if you know that that's the case, then the very first thing that you need to factor into your negotiation technique is to say, I need to make sure that the deposit that I'm paying is large enough to pay their commission. And not only that, but I am potentially going to release that early so that the agent has, I guess, they know as a matter of fact that they are actually going to get paid, and they're going to get paid in a timely way. At that point, that then relieves them of their burden, solves their particular need, and now they can concentrate on solving the needs of the vendor in trying to achieve the maximum sale price. So that, I guess, that's the impetus of that. Now, if it's a seasoned agent, maybe the opposite might apply. So the seasoned agent has been doing this for years. Chances are they've got a pipeline of sales that are coming through anyway. They've probably got a pipeline of commission checks. And so they may be a little bit more happy with the delayed settlement type approach. So, they might wait for the 12 months to actually get their commission check, because they then know that the likelihood of them getting the secondary sale and getting an additional set of commissions out of that is quite high. And so they can afford that, and they're going to look at it more in a business sense to say, well, if that's the case, I'm going to have a delayed settlement here, but it's actually going to give me two rewards over here. So hopefully that answers that question, Michael, and addresses the concerns that Tracy raised in that process. Now I can see a number of different responses back and forth on that. I'm just going to see if I can skim that. So Tracy said, I have many clients who have become friends. I tell them all about the pocket listings that I have. I'm not quite sure what you mean by a pocket listing there, Tracy. So my humble apologies. Because I know by the stage I can trust them and know that I'm helping them to add value to their wealth. Absolutely. It's all about trust. That is really important. And Tracy likes dad jokes. That's always good to hear as well. And you're giving away all of the tips that we learn. Sorry. Well, yeah, I'm adding value to the process, Tracy. That's why you're subscribing here. That's the whole point. And Tracy then said, REIQ won't allow it. I have tried it. I'm not quite sure what you're saying they won't allow, but I think we've kind of covered that topic quite well. Tracy then goes on to say, usual conversation is that if you sell it to me, then I will sell it through you. Well, you may sell it through them. I try to not say I will guarantee to sell it to you, because it really comes down to whether or not they are the kind of agent that is great to sell through. So I don't want to make a promise to sell through an agent where I know that they're only great to buy through. What I will say is that, hey, there's an opportunity for us to work together moving forward if we can build rapport at this point. And I think that you're the agent that I'm working on. So, okay, so that's kind of covered that little topic. Jane says, thanks, Rob. I have to go. We'll watch the replay. No problems at all. REIQ won't allow us to release settlement early. Now, I'm not talking about releasing settlement early. I'm talking about releasing the deposit early. And it's a common tactic that I do quite regularly, Tracy, is to say, well, I'm going to put $20,000 or $30,000 deposit in. It's initially into the agent's trust account or into the solicitor's trust account. And once we get past the due diligence period and the contract becomes unconditional, then I actually release that deposit right up front so that the vendor can actually spend that as they see fit. Now, in spending it as they see fit, one of the things that they will typically do is meet the obligation to pay for the agent. So hopefully that helps in that regard. So folks, that is how to build a rapport with an agent. So hopefully that helps you. I guess a couple of extra elements that some extra tips that we give to the guys that do our property development formula program. We actually teach them that they should actually become area experts, and that when they do become an area expert, they're going to analyze all of the particular properties that meet their development strategy in the area, and they're going to build a hot list of properties. So when you've got that hot list of properties, that is a fantastic way for you to then talk to an agent and say, look, I've got a hot list of, let's just say 100 properties in the area that I have an interest in. I've got 5 right now that I'd be very interested in you going and have a chat to the actual owner, maybe have a door knock, that sort of thing, and just say, look, I'm interested in this particular property. And that then gives you I guess, a way to talk to that agent and say, well, if you can actually go talk to this person, I am a motivated buyer, and that is a property that is actually on my hot list. So if that person's, if that person is looking to sell, you've already got a two-sided transaction here. It's just now a matter of trying to find a price point. And so if you give a couple of properties to an agent to actually go door knocking for you, now you're actually outsourcing the legwork, which is, for me, a fantastic way of having another engagement and also extending and leveraging my time by allowing that to happen. And what typically will happen is one agent will do fantastically well in doing that, and another agent will not. And that's how you're going to start to test the mettle of, I guess, the capability of some of your agents. And so, the agent that did not do well, you obviously take those properties and you give it back to some of the agents that did do well. And, you're really rewarding people that have actually done work to assist you in the process. So hopefully that helps everybody. I guess, looking for questions from the crowd. Nothing has come through of late. A lot of comments, but no actual questions of late. So I'm coming to an end at the moment. If anybody has got a couple of questions, then I'm going to say that if you want to flick that through, there's generally about a minute or two delay between you typing it and me actually seeing it. So if I don't see something come through in the next 30 seconds or so, I'm going to give that a little bit of a wrap. I can see a few comments on here. And Tracy says, I always take enough deposit to cover my commission. So clearly, Tracy, you're an agent. So, but the REIQ will not allow me to release it early. I think you might want to sanity check that one, Tracy, because I release deposits very early, very regularly. So either you're not getting advice or I'm not getting advice, that they seem to be in conflict with each other. But I'm happy to take that one offline if you want to come and have a chat to me later. Sam has said, brilliant info. Thank you, mate. Appreciate that. Shirlene says, thanks, Rob. Great session. And Sam has thanked me again for the second time, saying brilliant. So doubly thanks, Sam. All good. So as I haven't seen any questions, folks, I am going to see you again next week for our next Sunday session at 5 o'clock. And reminder of the upcoming events that we've got for our meetups in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane. So Melbourne will be the 9th of September, raising funds through co-development. That will be Adam Panisi. Brisbane will be the 19th of November, the Brisbane City Council actually coming in, and Sydney will be on the 23rd of November, and that will be CoreLogic RP Data, and watch out for that special as it comes through. So that being said, folks, I'm going to give that a wrap. Thank you very much for your time. I am Rob Flux from Property Developer Network, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye for now, folks.